Good morning and welcome to another edition of Free Associations Radio and the Robert Phoenix Show. This is 15 Minutes of Flame. How is everybody? I'm broadcasting to you live from sunny South Central Texas, Austin, Texas, where over the weekend I experienced one of the most kind of surreal sequence of events in my life. And I'm here to share it with you. So here we are, it's Saturday. And my son is playing in a baseball tournament. His team is terrible this year. I mean, he had some really good teams he was on, and this is not one of them. This team is pretty bad. And I'm not even going to go into the reasons why. But, you know, my kid is for those of you who know about human design, he's a 2-4 projector, like me, imagine that. Excuse me. And as a 2-4 projector, he takes on the characteristics and the qualities and the energies that are around him. All projectors do. That's the nature of being the projector. If you don't know about human design, I suggest you check it out. It's a very interesting system that blends astrology, Kabbalah, and the I Ching. Very accurate too, in terms of personality profile type, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not sure how good it is at being predictive. But understanding types, it's a very, very sophisticated and super solid system. Anyway, so he's on this team and they're not doing very well. He's not doing very well. So we're just trying to get through it, get through the season. And we've had all kinds of strangeness with rain and games being canceled. And it's just been a very awkward and non-rhythmic experience for us. So we're at this tournament on Saturday, and we have a boy on our team who's pitching. By the way, let me give you an idea of what the weather was like. It was about 92, 93 degrees. It was hot. In fact, earlier in the day, we were talking about how summer had arrived, that there was, spring was no longer here, no turning back. From this point through October, it would be sub-Saharan in Austin, Texas. And it was gray and muggy, and you get the drift. So 91, 92 degrees. So we're playing this team, and we have this young man who's pitching, and he's not very experienced with pitching. And he has a very strange delivery, sidearm delivery. And he whips the ball into the plate, and there's this boy who's at bat for the other team. And the next thing I know, the pitch hits him right in the eye. And if you've never heard a baseball traveling about 60 miles per hour hitting somebody in the skull, it sounds like a combination of like getting a bag of potato chips and crushing potato chips and the sound of a watermelon being crushed simultaneously. And the kid hit the ground and started screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." And a silence dropped over these fields like I'd never heard before. And I was kind of shocked, to be honest with you. It was very hard to witness, extremely hard to witness. And luckily there was a doctor in the stands. He was at one of the other games. He came over and treated the boy. The boy was down for about 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes. It was, his mother was in the stands and she was in tears. She was holding a couple of bottles of water and tears are streaming down her face. The boy who was pitching, he's mortified. There's blood coming out. I mean, it was a crazy scene. Never seen it before. Backstory is the boy who was batting. It was his first time playing baseball. Well, first year playing baseball. 13 years old, first year playing baseball. These kids have been playing baseball, most of them since they were 9. They know how to duck out of a pitch. And unfortunately, he did not do that. He has a history of turning into pitches, apparently, according to the coach. Now, if that was my kid and he was playing for the first time and that was his history, he'd have a face mask on. Bottom line. So the kid who's on our team gets pulled out. He's in the dugout. He's just crying. He's tears, shaken. Um, heavy scene. Now, as this is happening, all of a sudden the weather changes. And it goes from about 90, 91 degrees to probably about 58. I've never experienced anything like this before. It was insane. The temperature dropped about 30 degrees. And we had winds. The winds were there all day, but they started kicking up. And the next thing you know, the sky is getting dark. And there's lightning. And they have these lightning sensors on fields in Texas. So if there's any lightning that happens, these sensors pick it up and an alarm sounds. And then the alarm sounds. And it's all very apocalyptic. I gotta just tell you, there was just something about that event. It was almost biblical. The kid getting hit in the eye. It's the left eye. So now we have, this whole kind of eye of Horus thing going on. It was really weird. And blood from the vision. It was the left eye. It was like inner vision. And I know we can build a lot of cases around some of this stuff. But it was, where else in Texas was this happening? Where else in Texas was, or even the United States for that matter, was a kid getting hit in the eye, and then the weather shifts and changes by 30 degrees, and we've got thunder, we've got lightning, we've got delays, and people moving on the field and off the field, on the field and off the field. This went on for about 45 minutes, almost an hour. Game delayed, come back, play the game. Guess who comes into the game to pitch? My kid. Very strange stuff. I've never experienced anything like that before in my life. Very odd. We lost the game. Happy Mayday, everybody. Let me just say one more thing about this whole baseball trip before I move on to really, which is going to be the focus of most of today's program. Up until this year, my son has done, for the most part, really, really well at baseball. Teams that have played really well. And this has not been a great season for him. It's been up and down. The team has been down more than it's been up. And I've had to let go of a lot of pieces, in some ways, around what all this means for him and me. And, and it's been a really powerful exercise and really empowering in a lot of ways to surrender and just allow this event to happen. And to see this event and to love my kid and to do the best I can to be there for him. And it's not, I'm not perfect. There are times where I get on his case a little bit because he can put forth a little more effort, like we all can in our lives. But it's been an interesting yoga, and at the end of the day, I'll be, grateful for this and whatever comes of it and whatever we learn from it. I think it's a good experience. So let's talk about today. Today is Mayday, May 1st, and if you grew up during the Cold War, like a number of you have who listen to this program, and if you haven't, let me take you back in time. If you watch TV in the 1960s or 70s, every day, every Mayday on the news, they would provide us here in America with a glimpse of the latest of Russia's finest missiles and rockets and tanks. It was intercontinental ballistic penises on parade. That's what it was. Because Mayday was a show of virility, a show of strength. If you go back far enough into the annals of Mayday, also known as Beltane, they would perform these things called maypole dances, also known as Morris dances. And the reason why they were known as Morris dances was because Morris stood for Moorish, or the dark ones, right? So people were dancing around essentially phalluses, which is why they bring out all the big missiles and stuff on Mayday. So Mayday is a day of phallic worship. And if you go back far enough into phallic worship, you'll go into the Khazarian Empire, where phallus worship was probably the primary tract of religious belief, superstitious religious belief. So this is International Penis Day. And what's interesting, it's like, it's kind of turned into the goddess and Mayday and all that stuff. But it has an unusual history. Mayday. And we're going to get into some of the days throughout history that represent that Mayday, the events that have happened on Mayday, and some of them will blow your mind. Let me give you a couple here. Just wait, check this out. All right, here we go. We're going to go, let's see, how far back do we want to go? The Act of Union. Notice the word union, because May Day is also a day that represents the workers of the world. The workers of the world unite on May Day. The Act of Union joins the Kingdom of England and Kingdom of Scotland to form the Kingdom of Great Britain. Today, this very day, 1707. So if it's like a phallic worship day, that means that Scotland and England were crossing swords, right? Okay. Let's see, what else do we have here? This is a good one right here. Check this out. Guess what happened in 1776? No, it doesn't have to do with the American Revolution. It has to do with the Illuminati. That's right. On May 1st, 1776, in Ingolstadt, Upper Bavaria, the Jesuit taught, Rothschild financed, Adam Weishaupt established the Illuminati. How about that? 1776. That's right. Isn't that interesting? In 1785, Kamehameha I, one of the greatest kings in the history of the planet, the king of Hawaii, defeats Kalanick-Opule and establishes the Kingdom of Hawaii. So we have Hawaii being established on May Day. We have Great Britain being established on May Day. We have the Illuminati, which one could make a case that it has become an entity and perhaps even an invisible continent, an invisible empire unto itself. The borderless empire, the Illuminati, on May 1st. How about that? What else do we have here? The Mormons formally dedicated the Nauvoo Temple in Nauvoo, Illinois. That was a big deal. And then they split because people were sick of them and then went to Utah. Nauvoo, Illinois is where the temple was dedicated. The province of Isabella was created in the Philippines in honor of Queen Isabella II. So the Philippines were Isabella at one point in time. Today on May Day, that's when it happened. The Union Army completes its capture of New Orleans, which is catastrophic for New Orleans. That was today on May Day. And at the same time, the Battle of Chancellorsville began. Here we go, another day or event of unification. This is in 1865. Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay signed the Treaty of the Triple Alliance. So let's check this out. So we have England and Scotland coming together to form Great Britain. We have the beginning of the Illuminati, the Invisible Empire. We have the founding of Isabella, which is the Philippines. And now we have these three countries in South America coming together. So can you see that there's a pattern here? They understand, they, being the people that orchestrate events, the architects of this so-called reality, understand the prominence of date and time and place, seasonal interchange, precession of the equinox, astrology, science, etc., numerology. It's all in there. It is part of the esoteric matrix which forms the backbone of this planet, and many of you have figured this out. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, here we go. This is interesting. This is interesting. The Memphis race riots began. This was in 1866. So reports of the atrocities influenced by the passage of the 14th Amendment, the Constitution of the United States. So they've got riots going on. There's some more riots that happen on Mayday. We have in 1884 the proclamation of the demand for the 8-hour workday in the United States. Workers of the world unite. Now, some could make a case that that's not a bad thing, that people were being put into bondage and slavery and, either in some formal or informal fashion or manner because there were no checks and balances in the workplace, that the 8-hour workday was humane and gave people a chance to go home and rest and recuperate before they went back into, again, slave and tarry for their masters and their masters' economic gain. It's an interesting conundrum because I was watching Office Space again last night, which is one of my favorite movies, because Office Space really illustrated how little people work in the workplace. That out of a given 8-hour day, they might turn in about 4 hours worth of work, really. So do we really need an 8-hour workday? The thing with 8-hour workdays, here's what happened with the 8-hour workday. The 8-hour workday turned into the 24-hour workday. Because once the 8-hour workday was established, then they had night shifts. And then they had swing shifts. So work was going on all the time. It was just cordoned off into 8-hour sections in terms of manufacturing and production. Let's see. This is a little known fact. Back in 1884, Moses Fleetwood Walker became the first black person to play in a professional baseball game in the United States. Isn't that interesting? Jackie Robinson became the first African American to play or Black American to play in a professional baseball game, Major League, aka the National League, but Moses Fleetwood Walker was the first guy to get paid. So here we go again, 1886, just 2 years after the proclamation for the demand for the 8-hour workday, rallies are held throughout the United States demanding the 8-hour workday, culminating in the Haymarket Affair in Chicago. Of course, it's always Chicago, in commemoration of which May 1st is celebrated as International Workers' Day in many countries. Now, of course, by this time, the Bolsheviks and communism were in ascent. It would be just a couple of decades later that in 1917, the revolution, the communist revolution, would be in place, the Bolshevik Revolution. But the backbone and the spine for this had been created even before that. Let's see what else we have here. The first significant American protest march, Coxey's Army, happened in 1894 in Washington, D.C. In 1898, the Spanish-American War, the Battle of Manila Bay. The United States Navy destroys the Spanish Pacific Fleet in the first major battle of the war. Hello? What do you think the United States wanted? They wanted Isabella. Here's an interesting little event. In 1915, the RMS Lusitania departs from New York City on her 202nd and final crossing of the Atlantic. So the Lusitania had taken 202 voyages. You take that 202, and what do you get? You get 22, the master number. The number of the master builder inside of numerology, not inside of Freemasonry. Crossing of the Atlantic. 6 days later, the ship is torpedoed off the coast of Ireland with a loss of 1,198 lives. And of course, that is the call for the United States to be ushered into World War I. It was the sinking of Lusitania, and most of you know loose lips don't sink ships. Loose lips sink ships. And the Germans had known for weeks that the Lusitania was carrying munitions. So munitions being bombs, bullets, grenades, whatever they were using back in their primitive World War I warfare to blow up, maim, kill people in excess, which they did. It was a bloody war. It was coming into Europe and going to be used against the Germans. And the Germans knew this. They'd intercepted the radio broadcast, and they put posters up all around New York. The Germans put posters up around New York. Don't get on the Lusitania. Stay off the Lusitania. They were telling people, don't get on that ship. Of course they did, and since it was a time of open warfare, the Russians torpedoed it. Now, one could make a case that really all the Russians, or sorry, the Germans, of course it's the Russians or the Germans always, all the Germans needed to do was to get to where the Lusitania was going to dock, although that may not have been an easy thing at that point in time. So it was sunk, and hence the United States enters into World War II, or sorry, World War I. Okay, what else do we have here? 1919, German troops enter Munich to squash the Bavarian Soviet Republic. The All China, and this is in 1925, here we go. The All China Federation of Trade Unions is officially founded. Today it is the largest trade union in the world with 134 million members. Of course, they really don't do anything. They don't go on strike. They're just represented by the state. The Union Labor, this is 1927, the Union Labor Life Insurance Company is founded by the American Federation of Labor. So union, union, union. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Check this out. In 1930, Pluto is officially named. How about that? So today is not the day that Pluto was discovered, but the day that Pluto was named. So Mayday is Pluto Day. And here we have the alchemical marriage of opposition, being that we are in the sign of Taurus, which is opposite the sign of Scorpio, which was essentially relocated from Mars to Pluto. The open borders of the solar system. The Empire State Building, which at one time was the biggest building in the United States, might have been in the world, if I'm not mistaken. So it was the biggest, phallic symbol. It was dedicated on May 1st. Of course, it'd have to be. Let's see, we've got some World War II action, which I think we'll probably skip, except for this little nugget here. That in 1945, a German newsreader officially announces that Adolf Hitler has fallen at his command post in the Reich Chancellery, fighting to the last breath against Bolshevism. And for Germany, the Soviet flag is raised over the Reich Chancellery by order of Stalin. That happens on Mayday. So we know that Hitler did not fall in that chancellery. Hitler was probably on his way to South America through Spain. But the day exists in fake history. And we do know that Stalin did raise the Soviet flag over Germany at that point in time. Goebbels and his wife Magda committed suicide in the Reich Gardens. The children were also killed by having cyanide pills inserted into their mouths by their mother Magda. That's 1945. Okay. What else do we have? So this is an interesting day, isn't it? There's a lot going on May Day. I'm telling you, man. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea, North Korea, is established with Kim Il-sung as leader. So today is Korea's birthday, North Korea's birthday. How about that? May Day. Guam is organized as a United States Commonwealth. May Day. Here's a very interesting little May Day tidbit. the polio vaccine developed by Jonas Salk is made available to the public. So today, Mayday, we've got the polio vaccine. So that's the birth of vaccinations. Mayday. How about that? A lot happening. A lot happening. Let's see, what else do we have here? There's more. There's a lot more. In 1961, Prime Minister of Cuba, Fidel Castro, proclaims Cuba a socialist nation and abolishes elections. Today, Mayday. 1960, Cold War, U-2 incident. This is a big one. Francis Gary Powers and a Lockheed U-2 spy plane is shot down over the Soviet Union, sparking a diplomatic crisis. Also on Mayday. Elvis and Priscilla Beaulieu, soon to be known as Priscilla Presley, are married in Las Vegas on Mayday. How about that? Let's see, what else do we have here? There's some interesting stuff. Oh, check this out. Walt Disney World opens on Mayday, 1989, near Orlando, Florida. How about that? Yep. Okay, 1982, Operation Black Buck. The Royal Air Force attacks the Argentine Air Force during the Falklands War. Remember that war, 1982. Mayday, three-time Formula One world champion Ayrton Senna is killed in an accident during the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola. Now, I have written extensively about Ayrton Senna, and I firmly believe, even though there is no connection to the Renault Williams team who Senna was racing for, that there was no, how do I say this, foul play involved with his car. To this day, this to me is a ritual sacrifice with Ayrton Senna, and I don't know how it happens. There's something supernatural about Ayrton Senna's death. And even the fact that Ayrton Senna had his left eye, just like this boy that was playing baseball on Saturday, had the baseball hit his eye. If that pitch goes a half an inch lower, I think that boy could have lost his eye. It hit the orbital right above the eye, 10 stitches. Half an inch lower, he might lose that eye. The way Senna died was his car was rounding a curve at a Grand Prix in San Marino, and for some reason it lost control and it hit a wall, and the part of the steering column broke free, and it was shot like a missile up to Senna's helmet, and it got just below the helmet and through the visor and pierced his left eye. And Senna was a very spiritual, religious guy. He was an interesting character. I've written about him quite a bit. He was almost Avatar-like in some ways. Imperfect, as all humans are, but very unusual. He was about as close to being a mystic race car driver as you can find. And he died on Mayday. Today's the day he died. It feels very supernatural to this day. What else? SpongeBob SquarePants premieres on Nickelodeon. How about that? On Mayday. SpongeBob's birthday is Mayday. Same-sex marriage legalized in Sweden. That was in 2009. But if we go back to 2003, guess what we have? We have the invasion of Iraq. In what becomes known as Mission Accomplished speech on board the USS Abraham Lincoln off the coast of California, U.S. President George W. Bush declares that major combat operations in Iraq have ended. Really? Sounds like it's still going on to this day. And of course, there's a number of interesting birthdays. on Mayday. We're going to skip most of them because this is only a half an hour show and I'm 31 minutes into it. Now, what does this all have to do with today? Well, today it happens to be Loyalty Day. Donald Trump is pushing Loyalty Day on Mayday. And is dedicated to recognize and reaffirm our allegiance to the principles upon which America was built and express pride in those ideals. This is what Trump has to say. The United States stands as the world's leader in upholding the ideals of freedom, equality, and justice together. And with these fundamental concepts enshrined in our Constitution, our nation perseveres in the face of those who would seek to harm it. So it's not about finding the excellence without the threat. There's always the imminent threat. There's something that we not only do we have to protect, but we have to protect it aggressively by going after the people that would seek to take these very great, amazing, bigly things away from us. Trump called on Americans to observe this day with ceremonies in schools and other public places, including reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, I'm not down. I'm okay with reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. It's like, I'm not a Debbie Downer. Recite the Pledge of Allegiance. It's fine. But what's happened with the Pledge of Allegiance is the thing that we're pledging allegiance to, that cheese has moved at least 30 times, maybe more, since that Pledge of Allegiance was written. I had a conversation with a friend of mine. We were talking about sociopathology. And, I was telling him that I love him. He's one of my friends, one of my best friends. He never listens to my show, so it's not a big deal. But he's a big Tiger Woods fan, and I can't bear to tell him that Tiger Woods' father was not just a Green Beret, but he was involved in MK Ultra and mind control, and Tiger Woods was a military experiment. It's just too far out for him to wrap his head around. I'd be like Roddy Piper trying to slam those glasses onto Keith David in They Live. So I leave that discussion alone, and I let him talk poetically about Tiger Woods and how great he was and how great his father was and their relationship and how terrible the fall from the height of his game. What he doesn't realize is Tiger Woods has likely been replaced. That this is not even the same guy, not even the same golfer. It's not the same person after that very strange event with his wife at that time. You never see his wife anymore, do you? Don't see his wife, don't see his kids. There's nothing. And Tiger Woods' mother is still alive too, but you don't hear from her. Ellen Nordgren. Ellen Nordgren was one of those women that some people on the internet actually think is a man. I have no proof or evidence of this. I'm just letting you know. So Tiger he was a total experiment and a total, once his father died, his handler died. Either Tiger certainly malfunctioned. We know that after his father died. But what happened after that night in Florida remains to be, it's a huge question. Was he cloned? Did he have a double? Who is this guy that's playing golf? Anyway, this led to a conversation about sociopathology with my friend. And I said, the world is run by sociopaths. And he asked me, do you think John McCain's a sociopath? I said, hell yes, he's a sociopath. You and I have to disagree. What about Warren Buffett? I said, of course he's a sociopath. That whole milk drinking thing, look, I know things about Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is heavily involved in, let's just say, industries that are publicly traded. Okay, let's just leave it at that. That's the rumor on the streets. And so he's like, well, I'm going to disagree with that. See, I think my friend, and God bless him, he's the model for the American who has some inkling and desire to live up to these ideals and standards that are patently American. But at the same time, there's this kind of event horizon that they just will not approach. Because to approach that event horizon means that they have to disassemble everything about what America stands for. And if you do that, then there's nothing left. And then once there's nothing left, it's the last of the organizing principles. And so then a person is adrift in a void of nihilism. And when that happens, all productive behavior ceases. There's no meaning, there's no purpose, nothing. There's the void. And so people will assiduously guard that gateway of the void. And I don't blame them, to be honest with you. So it's like and what's really interesting, and this is the fascinating piece, and I love this guy. Again, he's a longtime friend. But every time I bring in a point of view, he goes after me. What makes you so special? Oh yeah, you, Robert, you have all the answers, don't you? He gets into that. He goes onto attack mode. And look, I don't have all the answers. I'll be the first to tell you I don't have all the answers. But I got a lot of information. And I've been at this now for, since the 90s, the mid-90s, easily the mid-90s. So a long time. And I've field tested a lot of this stuff. And I've field tested my own response systems. And I'll tell you that there's a lot more that meets the eye. And you know it. If you're listening to this program, you know it. The challenge is getting to these people. These are the people. These are the people on the fringe. Because now there are people who have voted for Trump and they see what's happening and they're like, oh shit. We've been fooled again. Johnny Lydon, ever have the feeling you've been played? Or isn't that the ripped off? That's what he talked about with Malcolm McLaren and the Sex Pistols. And this is what a lot of the Trump supporters and Trump people are going through. They're going through this very challenging, depressive, demoralizing moment where they realize that in the first 100 days, he managed to do a Gemini Maximus flip trip on everything. Now, those people, to their credit, if they are really about the individual and about sovereignty, they'll move on very quickly and they'll say, okay, fine. We have the platform, we have ideas, and we have, to some extent, broken the politically correct spell and trance. Fine, Trump was what he was. We move on. And this is what I was saying on Facebook. I said, look, there's momentum here, and it doesn't have to really do with Trump. Screw Trump. Let's ride the wave. And I was talking about this months before Trump was elected because I didn't have any faith in Trump. I had no faith. I thought he was really interesting. I loved some of the stuff he did from a reality perspective. It was fascinating to watch, to see him just knock off these numbnuts in the Republican Party and then to go after Hillary Clinton was great. I loved it. It was great theater. And I have to say there was Schadenfreude, and I reveled in the fact that people could begin to speak their minds in an era where for the last 8 years under Obama, we had duct tape over our mouths. And that has nothing to do with racism. I'm sorry, it has nothing to do with racism. It has to do everything with freedom of speech. And for some people who have had their mouths bound up for 8 years, 16 years, 24 years, 32 years, 40 years, whatever it was, right? Whatever it was, ripping that tape off their mouth was a liberating, if albeit at times an uncomfortable experience, because we witnessed people who had been repressed for a very long time, and some of their behaviors were not really all that pleasant to watch and witness, and at times were cringeworthy. And these are supporters. These were Trump supporters at a number of the rallies. And, as somebody who's into freedom liberation. Not even liberation, just freedom. Somebody's into freedom and truth. I saw that. I'm like, it's like, can I give these people a pass? Can I give them a pass? It's like somebody who's been on a desert island for years, and they go to a golden corral, and then 12 hours later, they're slumped over in a corner, and they've got gravy and all these various sauces on their shirt and smeared all over their face, and their eyes are half open, and they're in a food coma, and they've got a half-eaten turkey drum in their hand, and they're beating the waitress who's trying to take their plate away. That's kind of what they were like. And so I look the other way. This is not pretty. This is really the vision of the ugly American. But it's the ugly American under the liberation of repression. Had these people had the pressure valve released 15, 20 years ago, we're not looking at the ugly American. Now, there's another version of the ugly American. That's the Antifa and the social justice version. Just as ugly, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway. It's the people, not the people who are disenchanted, because they'll find their own center again, and they'll look around and they'll say, we've either been conned, Trump has been replaced, or he's been handled, and now we've got President Kushner and First Lady Yael Kushner. That's her name, Yael. It's not Ivanka, it's Yael. And they'll begin to organize. Once, it's like once they wake up, begin to organize. Now, this is what's insidious, is that this happened with the Tea Party. The Tea Party was this first kind of desire to awaken the masses. And, of course, the Tea Party was completely handled from start to finish. When you have Sarah Palin being the voice of the Tea Party, who's another MK Ultra beta kitten, it's got the handler's fingerprints all over it. So every time, this is an interesting sort of note, every time we try to awaken and organize, and what happens is that the whole event and the whole movement gets handled from start to finish. And the next thing you know, Marco Rubio is a Tea Party candidate. How about that? Former male dancer dancer down in Florida. I'm not going to go any further. He's a dancer. Yeah. So what we have to do, though, really, is it's the people. I'm not even sure we can do it. But it's those people that are on the edge. It's like my friend, who will support a war. Because the war is the one thing that theoretically, if we win a war, could make America great again. Because when was the last time we won a war? So we went into Iraq and we found Saddam Hussein, or whoever that guy was. Was that really winning a war? Of course not. Did it have that feeling of, oh man, you know what? We did something great today. And we defended ourselves. And we stared down tyranny, real tyranny, and we defeated it. Did that have that feeling at all? No, it didn't, because it wasn't real. Did we win the Korean War? No, nobody won the Korean War. It's still ongoing, which is why we're having this conflict. Did we win World War II? We certainly didn't win Vietnam. We had our asses handed to us in Vietnam because of the rules of engagement. We were supposed to lose that war. That was part of the demoralization. Go back to World War II. Did we win World War II? No, we didn't win World War. I mean, people like to think we won World War II, but we didn't. I'll tell you who won World War II. It was the Soviets. They won World War II, and we helped them. They won World War II. It was Stalin. Stalin won World War II, and we helped Stalin. Bottom line. Did we win World War I? Not really. I mean, on the surface, it looks like. I mean, those are the great wars, and those are the wars that we have all of our heroic stories. So they feed our collective imagination, the dream, the trance. But in actuality, we really didn't win those wars. But this is what people are hungry for. They want something. They want that event that justifies and in some ways crystallizes this image that America is great, and it's usually done through war. And so these people, like my friend and who I love dearly, would sign off on it because they in their minds they think that John McCain is good, and that Kim Il-jung or Assad is bad, and they believe the narrative, the Fox News narrative, or whatever narrative it is about the fake sarin gas, and they're just going to throw down with it. Because in order to question that, in order to go beyond it, without becoming the other side, right? Because that's the other pitfall. If you question it, then you become the other side. And now you're in with the Antifas and the social justice warriors, and do they really want to be associated with that? No, they don't. It's tricky. It's a tightrope, is what it is. It is a mental and psychological tightrope. Cut the rope. Cut the rope. All right, I've got a bit over today. I had a lot to talk about. I just needed to get those days. Today, man, all those days. How about that? All those days on Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. I wonder if I can get some effects here today. Let's do some effects here. Let's see if I can do this. Let's see if this will work. Give you a little. Mayday, 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 Mayday. Mayday, 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 Mayday. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Mayday. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Now, about this fancy, I'm not making it into reverb. About this fancy mixer. And I've been playing with these effects, and sometimes they just don't show up. Mayday, Mayday. It's Mayday! Come on down! All right, boys and girls, let me go back to the other setting here. Get back into the realm of sanity. Into the realm of sanity. 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 You've been listening to 15 Minutes of Flame. I'm Robert Phoenix. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible.